What if I told you that a single drop of your blood, determined before you were even born, could tell a story about your longevity? You've likely heard your blood type, A, B, AB, or O, mentioned at the doctor's office or during a blood drive, usually as a footnote. But what if it were more than just a medical label? What if it were a hidden risk factor for the health challenges we face in our 60s, 70s, and beyond? Many of you have spent years diligently tracking your cholesterol, monitoring your blood pressure, and watching your sugar intake. You're doing the right things. But lately, I've been getting more questions from patients asking, is my blood type why my neighbor stays fit while I struggle? Or does my type put me at a disadvantage for heart disease? Today, we are going to look at the intersection of hematology, the study of blood, and longevity. We're going to move past the myths and look at what the actual, large-scale data says about how your ABO blood group might influence your cardiovascular risks, your clotting factors, and even your long-term health outlook. But I want to be clear right from the start. Your blood type is not your destiny. It is just one piece of a much larger biological puzzle. If you have a type that is statistically linked to higher risks, it doesn't mean you are helpless. In fact, it means the opposite. It gives you a roadmap for where you need to be extra vigilant. We're going to cover exactly which biomarkers in your blood can be affected by your type, why certain types have different inflammatory profiles, and most importantly, how you can outsmart your genetics with targeted nutrition and lifestyle changes that work for everyone, regardless of what's written on your medical chart. By the end of this, you'll have a clear, actionable plan to protect your heart and strengthen your health, no matter what your blood type happens to be. Let's look at the science of why your blood type matters more than you've been told. To understand why your blood type might influence your longevity, we first have to clarify what these letters actually represent. Your ABO blood group isn't just about the blood you donate. It's determined by specific sugar molecules known as antigens that sit on the surface of your red blood cells. Think of these antigens like a microscopic ID card that your immune system uses to recognize what belongs in your body and what doesn't. If you're type A, you have A antigens. If you're type B, you have B antigens. If you're AB, you have both. And if you're type O, you have neither. Now, here is where it gets interesting for our health as we get older. These antigens aren't just floating on your blood cells. They are also found on the surface of the cells that line your blood vessels, the endothelium, and they can even circulate in your plasma as soluble proteins. Because these markers are present throughout your vascular system, they can influence how your body interacts with other critical proteins. One of the most important of these is something called von Willebrand factor. This is a protein that plays a major role in blood clotting. Research has consistently shown that individuals with non-O blood types, that's A, B, and AB, tend to have higher baseline levels of this clotting factor compared to those with type O. Why does this matter for a senior audience? It means that on a purely physiological level, your blood might have a slightly higher tendency to clot. Now don't panic. This is a very subtle, baseline difference. It doesn't mean you're destined for a clot. But it does provide a biological explanation for why some studies show a slightly elevated risk of cardiovascular events in non-O blood groups. When you understand this, you stop looking at your blood type as a random label and start seeing it as a metabolic variable. It's an insight into how your body manages inflammation and coagulation. As a doctor who has spent years helping patients use lifestyle changes to manage heart health, I've learned that the more you know about your own unique biological map, the better decisions you can make in the kitchen and the pharmacy. We are moving away from one-size-fits-all advice and toward a more nuanced individual understanding of your own longevity. Now let's connect those dots to your heart health. When we talk about cardiovascular aging, we're often talking about the gradual buildup of plaque, that sticky, inflammatory process we've discussed before. But here's the piece of the puzzle that often gets missed: how blood type might influence the character of that plaque and the inflammation that drives it. Recent research into the cardiovascular profiles of different blood types has unveiled some compelling data. For instance, individuals with type AB or type B blood have shown, in some large-scale population studies, a slightly higher risk for coronary heart disease compared to type O. And when we dig into the why, it almost always points back to inflammation and cholesterol metabolism. Specifically, some researchers have observed that non-O blood types may have higher average levels of total cholesterol and LDL, the bad cholesterol we are all trying to keep in check. This isn't because you did anything wrong or because your diet is failing. It's a genetic predisposition. If you are one of these types, it's not a signal that you've failed. It's a signal that your body's internal traffic control for cholesterol might need a little extra help. Think of it like this. If your car is prone to getting a flat tire on a bumpy road, you don't stop driving. You just make sure you check your tire pressure more often. That's what we are doing here. We are identifying where your tires might be under more pressure so we can adjust our strategy. The risk factors we monitor, like high blood pressure and lipid levels, are the same for everyone, but the intensity with which you might need to manage them can shift based on this genetic profile. If you have a family history of heart issues and you know you're a non-O type, you shouldn't be alarmed. Instead, you should feel empowered to be a bit more rigorous about the high-yield nutrition habits we've talked about. It also highlights why standard blood panels are so vital. When you go in for your annual checkup, don't just ask, "Is it normal?" Ask, "Where do I fall in the optimal range?" Because normal is just an average of the entire population. And as we are learning, your body's unique genetic blueprint might require you to aim for the optimal side of those numbers to keep your arteries clear and your heart resilient for the long haul. We need to talk about the silent player in this game, which is inflammation. We've established that non-O blood types might have slightly different clotting profiles, but the real issue, the one that drives most of the chronic conditions we manage as seniors, is how these blood markers influence systemic inflammation. When your body detects an injury to your arterial lining, it sends out a series of distress signals. Think of these as alarm bells ringing throughout your circulatory system. Research suggests that for people with non-O blood types, those alarm bells might be a little more sensitive. Your immune system can sometimes be on alert more often than it needs to be, which creates a low-grade persistent inflammatory state. This isn't an infection you can feel. It's a quiet background hum of activity. Over years and decades, this noise makes it easier for LDL particles to get oxidized and trapped in your arterial walls. It's like having a security system that's a little too twitchy. It keeps going off, causing stress to the neighbors even when there's no real intruder. This is why, for many of my patients who carry these blood types, I prioritize anti-inflammatory protocols even more strictly. It's not just about lowering cholesterol. It's about cooling down that immune response. We do this by focusing on foods that act as natural dampeners for this process, like the polyphenols found in olive oil or the omega-3s in fatty fish. Comment engagement beat, warm and direct. Quick favor before we go deeper into these strategies. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. When I see where people are watching from, it helps me understand the different environments and health challenges you're dealing with locally, and I can tailor my future advice to those needs. I read every one of your comments. Now stay with me, because what I'm about to show you regarding how you can actually influence these genetic risks might surprise you. It goes against a lot of the common advice you hear online. Now let's pause for a moment. You've probably seen books or articles online claiming that if you have type A blood, you should eat only certain vegetables, or if you have type O, you need massive amounts of red meat. You've likely heard these blood type diets touted as the secret to perfect health. I want to be very clear with you. That is a dangerous distraction. There is no high-quality, peer-reviewed clinical evidence that suggests your blood type should dictate which entire food groups you eat or exclude. In fact, following a restrictive blood type diet can often lead to nutritional deficiencies, which is the last thing you need as you navigate your 60s and 70s. The best diet isn't a genetic gimmick. It is the fundamental science-backed approach of eating whole, nutrient-dense foods that lower systemic inflammation and protect your endothelial lining. The pattern interrupt here is this. Your blood type might be a genetic predisposition, but your lifestyle is the deciding factor. If you are type AB or AB and you are worried about those slightly higher markers for heart disease, the answer isn't to follow a fad diet. The answer is to double down on the high-yield foods that work for every human heart. It's about eating more cruciferous vegetables, more wild-caught fatty fish, and more fiber-rich legumes. When you stop looking for a magic diet based on your blood type and start focusing on stabilizing your blood sugar and reducing your oxidative stress, you are doing something far more powerful. You are taking active, conscious control over your health destiny. You are moving from being a passive recipient of your genetics to being an active architect of your longevity. We've covered the why and the what. Now let's look at what the latest large-scale science actually says about this. Forget the fads. Let's look at the data. Let's unpack why these restrictive blood type diets gain so much traction. They provide a simple, almost seductive answer to complex health problems. But when we look at the reality of how your body processes nutrients, it isn't based on your ABO antigens. It's based on how your cells handle glucose, fats, and oxidative stress. Regardless of your blood type, your heart needs the same things: stable blood sugar, low inflammation, and a strong, flexible endothelial lining. If you're type O, you aren't immune to the damage caused by refined sugars and inflammatory seed oils. If you're type A, you don't magically require a specific, limited list of plants to thrive. Instead of chasing a blood type diet, let's look at the universal longevity strategy that works for everyone. First, focus on fiber. We know fiber is the master key for cholesterol management. It acts like a sponge in your digestive tract, binding to bile acids, which are made from cholesterol, and pulling them out of your system. This forces your liver to pull more LDL out of your bloodstream to make more bile, effectively lowering your blood cholesterol naturally. This mechanism works perfectly whether you are type O or AB. Second, consider polyphenols. These are the colorful compounds in your berries, your green tea, and your extra virgin olive oil. They act as chemical bodyguards for your arteries, neutralizing the oxidative stress that turns a healthy LDL particle into a dangerous plaque-forming one. Third, let's talk about protein quality. Many people feel they need to drastically change their protein sources based on their blood type. Instead, focus on the quality of that protein. Whether you prefer salmon, lentils, or lean poultry, the goal is to choose sources that are free from high levels of saturated fat and processing. If you are a non-O type and are concerned about that slightly higher baseline for clotting factors, your best strategy isn't to cut out healthy food groups, it's to add more anti-inflammatory ones. Increase your intake of garlic, ginger, and leafy greens. These foods aren't just good for you. They provide the building blocks your body needs to maintain a healthy coagulation balance. By focusing on these universal pillars, you aren't just guessing based on a label. You're building a foundation that is proven to support heart health across the board. To really understand the weight of this, let's look at what the best data tells us. You've likely seen headlines suggesting type AB or type O blood is a direct cause of heart disease. But when we look at the massive long-term studies, like the ones published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, the picture is much more nuanced. For instance, one landmark study followed over 89,000 participants over several decades. They looked at the incidence of coronary heart disease and its link to blood type. What they found was that while there was a slight statistical association, specifically that non-O individuals had a modestly higher risk of cardiovascular events, this risk was almost entirely mediated by other factors, specifically lipid profiles and systemic inflammation markers. This is a profound realization. It means that your blood type isn't the driver of the disease. It's more like a passenger that can influence the ride. The real work is still done by the things we can control: your blood pressure, your inflammatory levels, and how your body handles cholesterol. Another study in the European Heart Journal examined blood type in relation to the risk of venous thromboembolism, basically, the risk of blood clots. Again, they found that non-O blood types had a higher risk compared to type O individuals. But notice the key takeaway. These studies aren't telling you that your blood type is a death sentence. They are telling researchers where to look when analyzing heart health. For you, this data is an incredible source of clarity. It means that if you know you are a non-O type, you simply have a bit more genetic incentive to be diligent. It validates your decision to prioritize those heart-healthy habits. You aren't doing it because of a superstition. You are doing it because the data shows that as an individual, those specific interventions provide you with the highest return on investment for your cardiovascular longevity. We've moved past the myths and looked at the data. So, what do you do with this information today? Whether you are a type O, A, B, or AB, your path to longevity remains remarkably consistent because the mechanisms of vascular aging are the same for every single one of us. If you want to protect your heart and minimize the risks associated with your genetic profile, here is your high-yield, actionable checklist. First, master your biomarkers. You need to move beyond normal on your lab tests. Ask your doctor for your specific ApoB levels, your high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, HSCRP, and your fasting insulin. These numbers tell the true story of your heart health. If your non-O blood type makes you feel like you need extra reassurance, these markers provide the objective data to show you exactly how well your lifestyle interventions are working. Second, stabilize with nitrate-rich foods. Regardless of your blood type, your endothelium thrives on nitric oxide, the molecule that keeps your blood vessels relaxed and flexible. You can boost this naturally by including more arugula, spinach, and beets in your diet. These aren't just vegetables, they are vascular fuel that keeps your circulation smooth, which is the best defense against any minor, genetically driven clotting tendencies. Third, prioritize low-intensity movement. I'm not talking about grueling workouts. I mean consistent, daily movement. Whether it's a brisk walk through your neighborhood, gardening, or a light swimming session, this consistent activity helps manage your blood sugar and lowers the chronic low-grade inflammation we discussed earlier. Finally, the power of consistency. The most effective longevity strategy isn't the one you do perfectly for 2 weeks. It's the one you can sustain for 20 years. Don't worry about the perfect diet or a restrictive label. Focus on those fundamental habits, the fiber, the colorful plants, the high-quality proteins that keep your inflammation low and your heart strong. You have more power than you think. You are not a prisoner to your blood type. You are the guardian of your health. When we look back on our journey today, the most important takeaway is this. Your blood type is a characteristic, not a verdict. It doesn't define the limits of your health, but it does highlight the areas where you can be most proactive. Whether you have type O or you fall into the non-O category, the principles of longevity remain the same. By focusing on high-yield, anti-inflammatory nutrition, monitoring your critical biomarkers, and staying consistent with daily movement, you are building a resilient cardiovascular system that can support you for years to come. Do not let a label cause you fear. Let it provide the focus you need to take control. If you found this deep dive into your health markers helpful, please share this video with a friend or family member. It might be just the nudge they need to look closer at their own heart health. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to navigate these health topics together. Thank you for watching, for taking charge of your well-being, and for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next one.